Merry almost Christmas, everyone, and welcome back to SFF180. Thomas here, your host as always. We are almost at the end of another decade, you guys. And while the world can seem like a very dark place these days, at least we can look forward to some exciting new novels to hopefully carry us through the tough times. Yes, this is the time of year when we all put together our lists of our most anticipated reads of the new year while pretending not to be irritated with ourselves that we didn't get to every single book on our lists for the previous year. Be that as it may, buckle up, because in this episode, as well as its companion episode for science fiction, which is going up this time tomorrow, I will walk you through no fewer than 30 fantasy releases for 2020. Now, my voice, as you may have noticed, is slightly hoarse, hence the, I have no idea why, but I'll do my best. Now, even with as many books as that, this list is far from comprehensive. For one thing, there are many releases for next year that have yet to be announced, and so this video only takes us to late August or early September. There are some high-profile announcements that you won't see here, right? Okay, but I am aware of them, just letting you know, so you don't need to nag me in the comments about how I forgot to mention Book 4 of the Stormlight Archives, or the first book in Sarah J. Maas's new series. And, of course, there are those announcements that I tend to categorize as I'll believe it when I see it. What's included here are the books I have my eye on the most. But if there are other fantasy novels not listed here that you are specifically excited about, well, by all means, let us know about those in the comments. Please note that all releases are tentative and subject to change without warning. We start off on January 21st with A Queen in Hiding by debut author Sarah Kozloff. Now, this is the first book in a 4-volume series called The Nine Realms, which Tor is releasing in its entirety on a monthly schedule from January to April. Orphaned, exiled, and hunted, Cerulean, Princess of Weirendale, must master the magic that is her birthright, become a ruthless guerrilla fighter, and transform into the queen she is destined to be. But to do it, she must win the favor of the spirits who play in mortal affairs, assemble an unlikely group of rebels, and wrest the throne from a corrupt aristocracy whose rot has spread throughout her kingdom. On February the 4th, Tor.com releases the next novella from Sarah Gailey in a hardcover edition, Upright Women Wanted, a pulp western pastiche in which queer librarian Esther must escape an arranged marriage and join up with a resistance movement fighting a fascistic future American Southwest. February 11th brings us Daughter from the Dark, a work in translation from Sergei and Marina Dyachenko, the authors of the widely acclaimed Vita Nostra. Now, in this new standalone story, fate brings together DJ Aspirin and 10-year-old Alyona. After he tries to save her from imminent danger, she ends up at his apartment, but in the morning, sinister doubts set in. Who is Alyona? A young con artist? A plant for nefarious blackmailer? Or perhaps a long-lost daughter Aspirin never knew existed? Whoever this mysterious girl is, she now refuses to leave. A game of cat and mouse has begun. Also on February 11th, Tor is hyping up the debut novel from A.J. Larkwood, The Unspoken Name, about an orc priestess turned assassin helping a wizard reclaim his lost seat of power. Arkady Martine has compared this book favorably to Le Guin's Earthsea novels, and it's also gotten high marks from my friend and colleague Paul Weimer, so I definitely have this one well centered on my radar. Okay, I don't usually include sequels on these lists unless they absolutely cannot be missed, and Robert Jackson Bennett's Shorefall is one of those. Following on from 2018's Foundry Side, this second volume in Jackson's Founders trilogy has our heroine, Sanshia, and her allies turning to their next task, sowing the seeds of a full-on magical industrial revolution. If they succeed, the secrets behind scriving, the art of imbuing everyday objects with sentience, will be accessible to all citizens, much to the displeasure of the robber barons who have hoarded this knowledge for themselves. Also on February the 18th, Orbit debuts The Wolf of Orrin Yarrow by K.S. Veloso. Originally self-published, this novel by a Filipina author is the story of the queen of a divided land, who must unite her people even if they hate her, even if it means stopping a ruin that she helped create. It's the first book in a series called The Bitch Queen Chronicles, so you can pretty well get the idea. It's not going to pussyfoot around. I'm detouring into horror for this next one, gang. March the 10th sees the release of The Deep by Alma Katsu, whose previous work of historical horror, The Hunger, covered the Donner Party expedition. This time, Katsu puts a supernatural spin on the ill-fated voyages of the Titanic and its sister ship, the Britannic. On March 17th, Tor releases The House in the Cerulean Sea by Lambda Award-winning author T.J. Klune. Linus Baker is a by-the-book caseworker in the department in charge of magical youth. He is tasked with determining whether 6 dangerous magical children are likely to bring about the end of the world. Arthur Parnassus is the master of the orphanage. Now, he would do anything to keep the children safe, even if it means the world will burn, and his secrets will come to light. It's a story of found family that's been likened to the Netflix series Umbrella Academy, and the cover design here seems to be trying to invoke a Neil Gaiman-ish aesthetic. Next, on March 24th, we will finally get N.K. Jemison's The City We Became. Now, in this expansion of her short story, The City Born Great, the Hugo-winning Triple Threat offers us the story of 5 New Yorkers who must come together to defend the city that never sleeps from an ancient evil. You know, New York City has survived just about everything that's been thrown at it over the years, and I'm eager to see what Jemison has in store for it now. Also on March 24th, from Tor.com Publishing comes the debut novella from Hive O, the Empress of Salt and Fortune. At once feminist high fantasy and an indictment of monarchy, this evocative tale follows the rise of the Empress Inyo, who has few resources and fewer friends. She's a northern daughter in a mage-made summer exile, but she will bend history to her will and bring down her enemies piece by piece. April the 14th sees the US release of the latest dark YA from Frances Hardinge, Deep Light, described as 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea meets Frankenstein. When 15-year-old Hark finds the still-beating heart of a terrifying deity, he risks everything to keep it out of the hands of smugglers, military scientists, and a secret fanatical cult so that he can use it to save the life of his best friend, Jelt. But with the heart, Jelt gradually and eerily transforms. How long should Hark stay loyal to his friend when he's becoming a monster? And what is Hark willing to sacrifice to save him? But that's not the only exciting YA to hit on April the 14th. Kate Pentecost's Elysium Girls is a fantasy western set in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, where witches, gods, and demons clash as the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. April the 14th is a busy day indeed. Angry Robot releases Samandtom, a novel by Asaf Asheri, translated from Hebrew. In this supernatural mystery, women are disappearing from streets, clubs, and rooftops, leaving detectives Samandtom and Biton, along with their team of mystic agents, trying to make sense of the weird crime scenes and even weirder forensic findings. The victims are seemingly unconnected, and the only clues to their disappearances are the small objects they leave behind: a whip, a feather, a lock of hair. Together they realize that these abductions signal the start of an apocalypse, a war between opposing hosts of angels, the daughters of Lilith and the Nephilim. Sarah Beth Durst releases Race the Sands through Harper Voyager. In this epic standalone fantasy, the acclaimed author of the Queens of Renthia series introduces an imaginative new world in which a pair of strong and determined women risk their lives, battling injustice, corruption, and deadly enemies in their quest to become monster racing champions. Also on April the 21st, I'm sure a lot of folks will be excited for The Girl and the Stars, the first book in a new trilogy by Mark Lawrence, set in the same world as his books of the Ancestor trilogy. This one follows a young girl, Yaz, who is born different into a harsh society in which undesirable children are by custom tossed into a pit. Yaz comes to realize that her so-called weaknesses are another kind of strength, and that the cruel customs of survival that have always governed her people are ready to be challenged. May the 7th brings us an exciting-sounding historical YA fantasy set against the French Revolution. Kat Dunn's Dangerous Remedy. Camille, a revolutionary's daughter, leads a band of outcasts, a runaway girl, a deserter, an aristocrat in hiding. Now, as the Battalion des Mortes, they cheat death, saving those about to meet a bloody end at the blade of Madame la Guillotine. But their latest rescue is not what she seems. The girl's no aristocrat, but her dark and disturbing powers means both the royalists and the revolutionaries want her. But who and what is she? On May the 12th, Ace releases Alina Boyden's Stealing Thunder, a sweeping epic fantasy set in a world inspired by the Mughal Empire of South Asia and featuring a transgender heroine. Razia Khan was raised to be the crown prince of Nizam, the most powerful kingdom in Daryastan. Born with the soul of a woman, she ran away at a young age to escape her father's hatred and live life true to herself. By day, she's a dancer, by night, a successful thief. But when her latest target leads her to cross paths with Arjun, the prince of Bikampur, her connection with the prince changes Razia's life forever, and she finds herself embroiled in a dangerous political war. May the 26th sees the release of a new YA series by screenwriter Namina Forna. In The Gilded Ones, 16-year-old Decca lives in fear and anticipation of the blood ceremony that will determine whether she will become a member of her village. Already different from everyone else because of her unnatural intuition, Decca prays for red blood so she can finally feel like she belongs. But on the day of the ceremony, her blood runs gold, the color of impurity. And Decca knows she will face a consequence worse than death. June 9th is going to be a very exciting day. First up, Solaris is releasing Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon-Ha Lee, a new epic fantasy by the author of the Machineries of Empire series. It's set in a ruthless empire whose power depends on its automata, magically animated and programmed with sigils and patterns painted in mystical pigments. A symbol painter, themselves a colonial subject, is frustrated in their work when their supply of the pigment Phoenix Extravagant dries up, and sets out to find the source. What they'll discover is darker than anything they could have imagined. Also on June 9th, Seth Dickinson continues his powerful saga The Masquerade in The Tyrant Baru Cormorant, featuring what has to be the most brilliantly realized villain in modern fantasy. This third of a projected 5 volumes reportedly weighs in at a mighty 750 pages, making it Baru's most ambitious adventure to date. I am absolutely ready for my soul to be crushed yet again. Now, if you like your fantasy with a bit of scathing political satire, look no further on June the 16th for Lavi Tidhar's By Force Alone, described as a retelling of Arthurian myth for the age of Brexit and Trump. Everyone thinks they know the story of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. The fact is, they don't know shit. Arthur, an overhyped gangster. Merlin, an eldritch parasite. Excalibur, a shady deal with a watery arms dealer. Britain, a clogged sewer that Rome abandoned just as soon as it could. A savage and cutting epic fantasy equally poetic and profane. By Force Alone is at once a timely political satire, a magical adventure, and a subversive masterwork. June the 23rd is going to be another wallet-breaking day. First off, Tor brings us the long-awaited next novel by Sarah Monette, writing as Catherine Addison. And although this is not the promised sequel to The Goblin Emperor, in The Angel of the Crows, angels inhabit every public building in an alternate 1880s London, and vampires and werewolves walk the streets with human beings under a well-regulated truce. Jack the Ripper stalks the streets of this London too, but this London has an angel, the Angel of the Crows. A fantastic utopia, but angels can fall, and that fall is like a nuclear bomb in both the physical and metaphysical worlds. Okay, I have to admit that to me, the inclusion of vampires and werewolves in a book is usually going to be a negative data point, but this is Catherine Addison, and so I'm hopeful that imagination and absorbing storytelling will see me through. On the same day, Hachette releases the new historical fantasy by H.G. Parry, author of The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep. In A Declaration of the Rights of Magicians, it is the Age of Enlightenment, of new and magical political movements, from the necromancer Robespierre calling for revolution in France, to the weather mage Toussaint Louverture leading the slaves of Haiti in their fight for freedom, to the bold new Prime Minister William Pitt weighing the legalization of magic amongst commoners in Britain and abolition throughout its colonies overseas. But amidst all the upheaval of the early modern world, there is an unknown force inciting all of human civilization into violent conflict, and it will require the combined efforts of revolutionaries, magicians, and abolitionists to unmask this hidden enemy before the whole world falls to darkness and chaos. Finally, on June 23rd, Tor.com releases The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water, a found family wuxia fantasy novella that combines the vibrancy of old-school martial arts movies with characters drawn from the margins of history. A bandit walks into a coffee house, and it all goes downhill from there. Guet M, a young votary of the Order of the Pure Moon, joins up with an eclectic group of thieves, whether they like it or not, in order to protect a sacred object, and finds herself in a far more complicated situation than she could have ever imagined. June the 30th brings us the new novel by Silvia Moreno Garcia, who made a splash this year with Gods of Jade and Shadow. Her new novel, Mexican Gothic, is a reimagining of classic Gothic suspense fiction, set in the High Place, an isolated mansion in 1950s Mexico. It's got all the lush melodrama you could hope for from stories like this, dark family secrets hinting at madness, violence, and seduction, with hints of dark magic lurking in the shadows. I suspect everybody also wears gorgeous, expensive outfits, and every bed in the house is an elaborately carved four-poster. Whatever the case, I'm ready to get my goth on this summer. July wraps up with Stephen Brust's The Baron of Magister Valley on the 28th. This is a new standalone novel in his Kavren Romances series, which are books set in the same world as his entertaining, if somewhat uneven, Vlad Tautosh series. Now this one is all about a prison break and a quest for revenge, but it's definitely not a retelling of the Count of Monte Cristo. Maybe. July 28th also sees the release of Kathleen Jennings' novella Flyaway from Tor.com. In a small western Queensland town, a reserved young woman, Bettina Scott, receives a note from one of her vanished brothers, a note that makes her question her memories of their disappearance and her father's departure. Her search for the truth throws her into tales of eerie dogs, vanished schools, cursed monsters, and enchanted bottles. On August the 11th, Harp Tene releases Star Daughter, a YA fantasy debut with a stunning cover, in which Neil Gaiman's Stardust meets a rich landscape of Hindu mythology and celestial intrigue. The daughter of a star and a mortal, Sheetal is used to keeping secrets, but when a flare of starfire injures her human father, Sheetal's quest to heal him will take her to a celestial court of shining wonders and dark shadows, where she must act as her family's champion in a competition to decide the next ruling house of the heavens, or risk never returning to Earth at all. Now, you won't often see books for middle grade readers on my lists, but when Nnedi Okorafor writes one, I'm on board. Kanga is a work of African Jujuism about a young boy named Namdi, who means to avenge his father's murder at the hands of a powerful crime lord. But when he is gifted with the Kanga, a magical artifact that bestows superpowers, he is charged with only using those powers for good, which presumably rules out violent revenge. It's all about learning that lesson about great power coming with great responsibility, and it arrives on August the 18th. And finally, we may very well have saved the best for last. Way back in 2004, Susanna Clarke popped up out of nowhere, delivered a glorious debut novel in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and then promptly dropped out of sight for a decade and a half. But on September 15th, she returns with Piranesi. Piranesi lives in the house, perhaps he always has. In his notebooks, day after day, he makes a clear and careful record of its wonders, the labyrinth of halls, the thousands upon thousands of statues, the tides which thunder up staircases, the clouds which move in slow procession through the upper halls. On Tuesdays and Fridays, Piranesi sees his friend, the Other. At other times he brings tributes of food and water lilies to the dead, but mostly he is alone. Messages begin to appear, scratched out in chalk on the pavements. There is someone new in the house. But who are they? And what do they want? Are they a friend, or do they bring destruction and madness, as the Other claims? The world that Piranesi thought he knew is becoming strange and dangerous. And there you have it, everyone. Enough books to fill anyone's reading schedule, with enough magic and wonder to last a year at least. But don't go away. We haven't even begun to cover next year's science fiction yet. So be back tomorrow and see 30 more titles your shelves won't want to live without. Thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a like, share the video with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe if you haven't done so. That is how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Wink's Army get little perks like getting to see some of my videos early. I want to thank all of those people for their wonderful additional support. It is greatly appreciated and very, very helpful. I want to thank all the rest of you for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube, and I can't really do an elaborate snapping thing because I'm holding tea, so until I see you all next time, happy reading, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone, and happy upcoming New Year.